Welcome to the Washington Week Extra. I'm Yamiche Alcindor. We're continuing our conversation on the economy. This week, the Federal Reserve raised interest rates by 0.75% to fight inflation. This was the largest hike in 28 years. And Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell indicated that a similar hike could come in July if the economy doesn't improve. In response to the Fed's historic action, stocks tumbled. The Wall Street fell into bear market territory amid increased concerns that a recession may be looming. Meanwhile, according to a USA Today Suffolk poll, President Biden's approval rating is at 39% amid economic fears. Joining me tonight to discuss this and more, Aisha Rasco, host of Weekend Edition Sunday for NPR, Scott McFarland, congressional correspondent for CBS News, and Eva McKen, national politics reporter for CNN. Thank you, all of you, for being here. Eva, I'm going to start with you because you're the one out in the country while we're all sort of doing our thing in D.C. You are talking to people out there so much about this economy and how people are feeling. So talk to us about the politics of the economy and who people are really blaming for what's going on.
Well, I think that Democrats and Republicans are equally frustrated about this issue. I think maybe some Democrats will give President Biden a little bit of grace here, but not a whole lot. And unfortunately, I think that the administration has sort of trained their sights on corporate greed, and actually Democratic candidates as well. That is their line. This is the fault of corporate greed. Your gas prices should not be this high. That might be all well and good, but at the end of the day, Americans are looking to leadership for them to do something. It is not sufficient to them, as well-intentioned as Democrats may be, to lay the blame on corporations. They want some action.
And of course, Republicans, Aisha, are laying the blame on Democrats. It's interesting to see a White House, this now, of course, being the Biden administration that we covered together as well. They're saying that it's Putin's price hike, but also President Biden was this week pointing his sort of anger at oil companies. I wonder what you make of the White House's messaging here and what they're trying to say versus what they're actually able to sort of message to regular people, everyday Americans.
Well, this is a tried and true strategy, right? So when gas prices go up, Democrats generally will blame oil companies. A lot of times they will haul in the executives into Congress. This week, Biden wrote a very strongly stern letter to refiners saying, refine more. We'll do what you need to do more. The problem, of course, is that, producing oil and gas is not as simple as sticking a straw in the ground and getting oil out. That's just not the way things work. And the price of oil is set on a global market. It's not just based on what happens in the U.S. Now, the problem is Americans don't want to hear that. They feel like their God-given right is to have cheap gasoline. And if they don't get that, they're mad. But that is the fact is this is a difficult situation. Biden has used almost every lever that he has. He's tapped the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. He is going to Saudi Arabia, even though they say it's not about fuel. It clearly also is, but there's not much else he can do.
And Scott, what are you hearing from lawmakers in Congress, especially as I was reading this today, 60% of executives say that they're getting ready for what could be a recession. That's scary thinking about sort of where things are going.
Let's think back to the last recession, the Great Recession, what happened in 2010. Dozens of seats flipped and the U.S. House flipped from Democratic to Republican. Here's the thing about economic impact on politics. It often can be factional. Troubles in the manufacturing sector, the Rust Belt may turn you out. Troubles on Wall Street, perhaps major cities feel it more immediately. Gas and groceries is different. Everybody feels it. That is a 50-state and D.C. phenomenon. Every incumbent has to struggle with constituents who are upset. And really doesn't matter socioeconomic class. Yes, low-income folks get hit the hardest, but everybody is concerned about it. Everybody goes to the grocery store. Everybody feels it. This is a universal economic impact. In this moment, it transcends party. It's just trouble for incumbents.
Eva, weigh in here when you think about sort of what Scott is saying, especially when it comes to the idea that everyone is feeling this. And I'll raise my hand as one of those Americans who you put money in your gas tank and you're like, wait, what is going on here?
That's why it's so difficult to outrun. President Biden, in an interview with this week with the Associated Press, he sort of pivoted and said he still thinks that his administration, with the cooperation of Democrats in Congress, can do other things, like lower the cost of prescription drugs, like reduce the cost of utility bills, like impose a minimum tax on corporations. And it makes sense that he's sort of trying to shift the message, right? Anything but gas prices, right? Because he can't outrun it. So he is hoping that he will be able, to, with Democrats in Congress, to provide relief in some other avenue.
And look how this masks the January 6th hearings. This seminal, unique American moment we are in, where democracy's on the line and the electorate is being driven by something else. That in itself is dangerous.
That's such a great point when you think about sort of the fact that we have to split our attention and that Americans can't focus on possibly our democracy coming to an end, or at least the dangers of our democracy coming to an end, because they're focused on everyday pocketbook issues, which is very understandable. I want to ask you, Scott, there was some reporting that White House officials were on the Hill, that they were sort of briefing lawmakers, and lawmakers, especially Democrats, were saying, what can we say here? And there wasn't really a response that lawmakers liked out of the White House.
Well, it was staff briefing lawmakers, which is a different statement than the principal briefing lawmakers. I think what Democrats want to have happen is be caught trying on something. There's no lever to push. It would have been pushed long ago if there was one. But they want to be shown taking some action and being caught in the act of trying to respond to these crises. And they haven't figured that out just yet. One Republican asked me this week, when are y'all going to have your primetime hearings on inflation? Let's leave aside the compelling nature of a primetime hearing on inflation. That would be great television. It's a point that they're going to make between now and November regularly. Where's the focus on inflation? And they're just going to beat Democrats with it.
And Aisha, last question to you. I'm hearing not just from Republicans, but everyday people in my family, when I check into them and say, are you watching the hearings? They say, literally someone says to me, are the hearings on gas prices? Mm-hmm. Yes, Democrats want to think that that's a talking point from Republicans, but I can tell you in my own reporting that people are saying that to me. I wonder what you're hearing from folks as they're thinking through sort of where their attention needs to be.
Well, they're looking at these pocketbook issues, especially when you have people that make their living in transportation, or you have Uber drivers and Lyft drivers. And we talked to a transportation, the owner of a transportation company just last week on Weekend Edition, about how he's struggling and can't, do all the trips that he used to do because it costs so much money. So that's what people are focused on, because it is so hard. And any increase in gasoline is always like, it's a tax. It's basically a rise, almost like a rise in taxes. And especially for poor people who have a lot less income, it makes such a huge difference when you have to pay so much at the tank. And it's hurting me even when it comes to, going to the grocery store. I got to pay $50 more at the grocery store just for some Cheez-Its and some, Lunchables. It's a lot. And then people can't, and then there are still supply chain issues where people can't find the products that they want. So these are things that it's very hard to message against. You can't message against it because it's everyday life. It's like what you're going through, and you can't miss it.
You can't miss it. And I was listening to a story where this woman said, I put $40 in my tank. I don't care where it gets me. $40 is my limit. I felt her pain so deeply. So thank you so much to all three of you for really talking about the politics of the economy here. Thank you to Scott, Eva, and Aisha for joining us and for sharing your reporting. I'm Yamiche Alcindor. Good night from Washington.